So the Western Conference playoffs are complete insanity right now, as the 3-seed Portland Trailblazers are 12 games out of the 1 seed, and the 10th-seeded Jazz are 16 games out of the 1 seed. So a 4-game difference between number 3 and number 10. Shout out to Lakers fans. I think they're out of the race, so they're not going to be here, as they're 5.5 games out of just Utah for number 10. So anyway, between the Trailblazers, Pelicans, Spurs, T-Wolves, Thunder, Nuggets, Clippers, and Jazz, what do we make of all this? Is it possible to make predictions? Where do you even start with this? I think you start with the Blazers and the Pelicans, who are currently on some pretty big winning streaks. The Blazers have won 7 in a row. The Pelicans have won 8 in a row. Both of these runs are basically on the backs of their star players. Damian Lillard has been playing like an MVP for a minute now, and I think it's a fair conversation to have on whether Lillard has been one of the 10 best players in the league this season. And then for the Pelicans, of course, it's been Anthony Davis. Between those two, which one do I think has a better chance of maintaining itself? I would have to say Anthony Davis, just because he's simply a better player than Damian Lillard is. However, I can't confidently pick which team can maintain itself, because if you look at it, Anthony Davis has one other guy who can really create for himself now with Drew. Damian also only has one other guy. It's CJ McCollum, and I would say McCollum is better at creating his own offense and putting up points than Drew is, but you could make the argument that CJ and Drew are kind of neck and neck in terms of overall quality, because Holiday does more defensively and is a better playmaker. And then outside of that one guy, like, there's not really anyone else who can confidently put up like over 16 to 17 a game. Like, Mirotic can have moments, Nurkic can have moments, and then both teams are littered with like not bad complementary pieces. With Shabazz Napier's been okay this year, and Aminu has been making threes, and Mo Harkless has been better lately, I guess. And then over with the Pelicans, Etuan Moore can make shots, and Darius Miller's been knocking down threes all year. So it's kind of tough to pick one of these teams. If I had to pick one, and this might just be totally gut feeling, nothing else, I think I would go with the Blazers, just because they're a good home team, and I could picture them going like 9-1 in their last 10 home games. But once again, I think Anthony Davis has a better chance of maintaining this over Dame. I don't know. Okay, I'll pick the Blazers being a little better than the Pelicans by like 1%. But the interesting thing is, after those two teams, you could make the case that all the teams under them will not be able to overtake them, just because the Spurs are dealing with no Kawhi Leonard, and apparently Kawhi's got like an actual timetable now. But even when he's back, I mean, when is Kawhi actually going to be himself, you know? If he can just be himself by the time the playoffs begin, then that's awesome, but I don't know what that's going to contribute in terms of winning games for the rest of the regular season. The T-Wolves don't have Jimmy Butler. They've already lost 2 in a row, and I fear that they could really collapse without him, because, I mean, when they really started turning it on was when Jimmy Butler just kind of took over the reins of the team. And, I mean, Jeff Teague is a good playmaker. He's not really Jimmy Butler, mainly because he's not as much of a threat to score or draw fouls. And then I think Towns has the abilities to lead an offense, but you look at someone like a Wiggins, and, you know, given that he's not the best playmaker in the world and sometimes takes bad shots and all that, and now his usage is higher without Jimmy, it's a tough time. And they lose a very good defender, of course. With OKC, I mean, they're just kind of in shambles defensively without Andre Robertson, on top of Carmelo Anthony has simply just not been that great this season. Now, there are multiple reasons for this. I think, number one, he just has been kind of disappointing as a catch-and-shoot player. He's averaging 1.8 made threes this season off of catch and shoot opportunities, which is basically like middle of the league. He's in the same area as like Damari Carroll and Evan Fournier and Gerald Green, Al-Farouq Aminu. Like, he's in that territory, which is kind of disappointing given what we all thought we were going to get, you know, the Olympic Melo, if you will. The other thing is his usage rate is way too close to Paul George's. Paul George's usage rate is 26, Melo's is 24. That should just simply be lower. You shouldn't be asking 33-year-old Melo to be in ISOs and all that. And of course, some of this is on Billy Donovan, right? Like, you can't just throw Carmelo Anthony out there and then expect him to drastically change his game up like that if you don't give him some sort of direction. But even so, when Melo does his ISOs and his jab steps and his taking mid-rangers with a guy in his face, it's not always very productive offense. And then defensively, you know, so Melo just not really playing to where you'd want him to be at. And, I mean, they recently acquired Corey Brewer, and I went into detail on this on the podcast in terms of defense and offense, why I think that signing really isn't going to do much for them. So I won't dive too deep into it here, but basically he's just not as good as Robertson is on either side of the floor, is the short version. So I do fear that OKC could just not even fall apart necessarily, but just never really get any better or any worse. Or maybe get a little worse. Like, they have 17 games left. I wouldn't be shocked if they went like 8-9 down the stretch, that sort of deal. So, yeah. Now, the Nuggets are kind of surging, but one thing with them is they're so night and day depending on whether they're at home or on the road, because they're one of the best home teams, but then they're like significantly under 500 on the road. And they have quite a few road games left. They have 11 road games left, and they have about 8 home games left. So even if they went like 7-1 in those games at home, but then they went like, I don't know, just like 4-7 on the road, that could be the difference between them potentially falling out of this thing. I mean, they're at the 8th seed right now, and they're a game behind OKC for number 7. And then you look at the Clippers and the Jazz. So one thing with the Clippers, I think they have the potential down the stretch here to have like a really good offense, because Tobias Harris has kind of been making a lot of shots for them. His three-point shooting from Detroit has continued itself as he's shooting 41% on 5 attempts a game. And then you have Lou, who's just been going nuts in the entire season and all that. On top of just the floor is a lot more open for them without Blake Griffin being there with DeAndre Jordan. So I don't think the Clippers should be forgotten about. Now, Utah at number 10 is interesting. I think for as good as Donovan Mitchell has been this season, he's been excellent. I think eventually it's going to catch up to them that they are relying on a rookie to carry their offense. I know Mitchell has been great, but the status quo for a very long time is the rookie wall. On top of that, even when a rookie can be having a great season, they can still make mistakes, okay? For one, Mitchell, I mean, just in the game against the Rockets, he had 8 turnovers, okay? He's also been fouling a decent amount lately, and his minutes per game have also been kind of alarmingly high. He played 40 minutes against the Magic, 38 minutes against the Kings, 39 minutes against the T-Wolves. He had 3 different 38-minute games about 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of them was against the Hornets, another one against the Spurs, one against the Suns. You're really going to ask a rookie to do all this? I feel like at a certain point he's just going to gas himself out. And that's not because he's not good, that's not because he's not great, it's because do we really expect a rookie to carry a professional basketball team playing nearly 40 minutes a night with the insane usage rate that he has? Like, that, if that maintains itself, I'm going to be shocked, okay? I also think the lack of spacing that Utah deals with Gobert and Rubio and Favors that I've mentioned a million times is eventually going to catch up to them as well. Whether that means you play Crowder at the 4 more often, or Jerebko at the 4, or whatever. I think Utah has been really good for a stretch here, but I think they are going to fall back down to earth. And I think as a result, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. Even though I am potentially the biggest Rudy Gobert fan on the planet. But I still don't think they're going to make it. It's tough, man. I mean, okay, so I don't have the guts to think OKC won't make it, because if anything, Westbrook will just say screw it and just drag them to the playoffs. But I could see the T-Wolves dropping to like number 7 or number 8 here. I could see OKC, maybe just by circumstance, getting at least to number 6, potentially number 5, depending on what happens with San Antonio and the whole Kawhi situation. Can they score enough without Kawhi Leonard when he comes back? How much of the offense are they going to give him? Is he going to hijack the entire offense and not be good enough to actually warrant his usage rate, but you have to give him the ball because he's Kawhi Leonard? So many interesting things. But ultimately, I think... Actually, before I even go down what I was about to go down, if you look at the Timberwolves' upcoming games, it's basically murderer's row. They have the Celtics in Minnesota. They have the Warriors in Minnesota. Then they go to Washington. John Wall might not be back by then, but the Wizards, still not a bad team, even with the guy not there. Although they've been falling apart a little bit lately. Well, not falling apart, but you get what I mean. Then they have the Spurs in San Antonio, who are always going to be tough to beat, especially when you put so much of the team's performance into your young players with Towns and Wiggins, and that's in San Antonio. Then you have Houston on a back-to-back, then the Clippers, and then it eases up a little bit for the Knicks, then you're playing the Sixers. Basically what I'm getting at is the T-Wolves are in for it over the next couple of weeks without Jimmy Butler. So, I mean, do I just ruin everyone's fun and say the T-Wolves are not going to make the playoffs and I put the Clippers in there over them instead? I mean, it would kill me to do it, but I kind of have to, man. Like, if Jimmy Butler's not going to be there, I don't see how the T-Wolves come out of this alive. So, there you go. I'm picking that Minnesota falls out and the Clippers get in there. That is my prediction. Now, it is totally based on Jimmy Butler's health, so take that for what it's worth. But yeah, that's what I say. I know Avery Bradley's currently hurt for the Clippers, but meh, whatever. Shout out to Avery. He needs Brad Stevens. That's going to do it. Basically, again, I don't think it's going to look that much different from what it is right now. But just take Minnesota out. If Jimmy Butler's not going to be healthy, put the Clippers in there, and there you go.